Welcome to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay, where we discuss growth strategies both for business and a personal perspective, discussing all kinds of businesses, growth strategies, technology, investment strategy, and much more. We are meeting with entrepreneurs, investors, app developers, and property developers. Our vision is to help 10,000 business owners grow their businesses. Introducing our host, Matt Lindsay. Matt is a former banker and corporate financier. He now spends his time building his own companies organically and through acquisition, as well as raising capital for other businesses. Matt works with a wide variety of entrepreneurs and investors.
Welcome along, Mr. Shaq Baker. Welcome to Matt Lindsay's The Growth Show. We're here today. It's early January. It's gloomy. We're in fucking lockdown. We can't leave the house. Shit, man. What are we going to do?
We're here, man. We're going to do what we can do. And thank you for having me, I just wanted to say.
Pleasure.
Nice that we can swear. I heard the swear, so I've been given my cue. It's a gloomy day today, and on top of that, if it wasn't lockdown, it's also January. I know sometimes people are a bit down in January because they've come off such a high off of Christmas and New Year's. But I think one thing that lockdown's kind of shown us is that the time is the time, and what we choose to do with it will be kind of what helps us get to the next level or helps us get through it. So
yeah. Yeah, cool. So in terms of our relationship, we met probably about a year ago. Is that right?
It was literally 1 year ago. So next week, I've got PIN.
Yeah.
And I met you at the first PIN. I knew of you before that because Tim talks about you.
Yeah.
He told me about you, but I met you at that PIN. Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, so Shaq runs the Watford PIN network, and I went along with a mutual acquaintance of ours, Tim Valdar, who runs a business called Mass Reports, and one of the speakers had dropped out, and Shaq asked me to do a bit of a presentation on one of the property transactions that I'd recently completed. So yeah, an impromptu overview there.
On the spot, I was so impressed, literally. One of our guys had dropped out. And what we do is we like to get local investors to talk about local stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when you have guests and people talk about stuff, there's sometimes it might be slightly, it feels sort of a bit far removed for some people. Oh, I could never do that. So a local investor kind of has another level of impact. And so obviously I knew about you from Tim, and I started speaking to you, and I was so impressed. I said, well, that sounds good. Would you be prepared to talk about that? He's like, yeah, of course. And you went up there and you nailed it. I said, oh, this guy's serious. And that was literally last January.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because one of my personal biggest fears has been public speaking for some time, and basically I just had to push myself through that and go and engage. And yeah, I still get those butterflies at the beginning, but then you deal with it and you get into your rhythm and you flow a little bit more. So
that was powerful because obviously, like I said, it's the first time meeting you. It was quite cheeky for me to ask, but I felt if you could do what you've told me, if you could do that for the room, they would get massive value from it. And literally, you killed it. You was like the best speaker on the day.
Thank you very much. I'll take my accolades and wear them proudly.
Yeah, no.
Good. So yeah, we met then, and we're working on a couple of projects together, bits and pieces that we've got going on, and we'll come on to that a little bit later on. But yeah, so first I just really wanted to talk about, I can see one of your plaques in the background. We've talked about this briefly before. As you know, I've got a bit of a connection with the music industry. My brother's a musician, and I know that you've got some history in that. So I think it'd be really useful for our viewers, listeners, if you could just take us through a bit of your journey, and maybe I'll interject with a few questions if I think there's anything I'd like to talk about. So, yeah. So obviously you've had from my perspective, you've had two successful careers in terms of as a musician, and then now you're property developer, investor, and you also do the pin network as well. But yeah, if you could start from the beginning and kind of take us through your journey and some of the things that you've done, that'd be really, really interesting.
So, I mean, I always, as a person, I always wanted to be, I'm naturally a creative person. So I was always going to be in the arts, whether it was music, um, there's some sort of design, like just anything you could create. So I think that's why I fell into music and film and fashion quite easily, because it gives you an opportunity to create. I'm just a creator. So I I think when I was maybe 18, 17, 18, I'd done like work experience in like in recording studios in London. That's when like recording studios were a thing. Everything was obviously, technology's made it so home recording is pretty, it's not only is it affordable, it's accessible. We're talking like 20 years ago, it was like you had to go to sort of mainstream studios, and that was before things when were analog. Now everything's sort of digital now. So
I remember those days. We had one of the Emu samplers from back in the day. My dad bought it for us for Christmas, and I never got to grips with it, and that was where the beginning of my brother kind of learned.
Exactly. That was us. Like we had access to certain little bits of equipment, so we just ran with it. And my family's quite musical. Like my in terms of like my actual brothers, the one beneath me is a drummer.
Okay.
He also raps. The one underneath him, he can make music, he raps. The one underneath him is a DJ. So it just came very, very easy to us. And so in my head, I was always like, I'm gonna do music. That's what I'm gonna do. We're talking before social media, before YouTube. So it wasn't as easy then, marketing and distributing music was everything was physical, it was CDs and vinyl. So it's a completely different game. And that was my start. And I think because I was always very independent minded, and I was always had a business brain for a creative person. They don't always, it's not standard. So I always knew that if I'm going to do this stuff, I have to do the work myself. So I've always been well versed in working very hard. So everything we'd ever really done came from a lot of application. So I started off doing music. I remember back in the days, was one of the first sort of UK urban platforms was Channel U, and I put a video on there, and it just blew up, and that made me think, actually I could potentially do this, but there was no income from it, so it was challenging to be able to, well, how do you make money? Are you going to do shows? There wasn't really accessible shows for urban acts in those times. There was no streams, so it really was a market where it was literally CDs, or if you weren't getting onto telly, net radio was a whole different challenge. So that's kind of how I started, but I always sort of did it. And then one of my friends, he had a record deal with Sony.
Okay.
So sort of hanging out and working with him, I started touring. So we've done like Glastonbury, Leeds and Reading Festival, and that opened up my eyes to the live side of things. And I loved music. I always wanted to do it. I just felt that it was something that was challenging because of the type of music we was making, and just because of the market at the time. I then I fell into film. I started doing film extra work.
Okay.
And but I was doing them consecutively. So I started doing film extra work, and randomly I think the first film I ever done was a film called Wimbledon with Paul Bettany.
Okay.
So now he's quite well known now. He plays Vision from Marvel. But this was like in 2002 maybe. It was the first one I'd done, and then after that I went on to I was in Batman Begins. I was in the Batman The Dark Knight. I did loads of things like that, but off the back of that, it was good because I got quite a lot of the work. was background and feature work. And off the back of that, I decided to go and get training to become an actor, and started doing, so I could do actual, more work. I could do dialogue, I could do all that stuff. But at the same time, I felt like I was in a similar situation, because it was like, as a Black British actor, it just felt like there wasn't a lot of opportunities. There's not lots of, we're talking like maybe 2004, 2003, 2005. There wasn't lots of, there was no Netflix, there was no YouTube. So in terms of opportunities, there wasn't a lot of films at the time. So again, these are the industries I wanted to work in, but I thought like opportunities were limited. I kept pressing on. So I think with the clothing stuff, the fashion, I felt like that was business. And I felt like music was cool, but it wasn't business. You couldn't just wake up and decide, I'm gonna hustle and get something from it. So the clothing, me and my partner at the time, Dre, we was able to maintain a brand. So we got an income from that, and it allowed us to be creative and make money, make impact, do lots of things. We were able to get the clothes into different stores. We had at one stage, when ASOS started opening up their brand, because originally they used to just be very singular. They started doing other brands. We had the fastest selling streetwear brand on the platform at the time.
Really? I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That was like 2008.
What was it called?
We had two brands. So the first one was called Dirty Denim.
Okay.
And the second one was called Justin Hustling. So we started doing because with the Dirty Denim, it was like cut and sewn, and
Right.
we were really very, very hands-on. We decided to start doing sort of more printed stuff on classics, like t-shirts, hoodies. We'd gone to like, maybe we had one or two jackets, hats and stuff like that. And that was sort of at a time when the UK streetwear market was small, but there was a lot of cool things happening. So brands like Trapstar, that's quite international now. We used to do a lot of not festivals, but like fairs, like street fairs and things like that. So that's where we was coming out of. And when I started to do music again, I kind of not put it to bed, but I felt like the music is an opportunity to raise your profile and gain exposure. And then off the back of that, the brand then brings in an income. So that's what we started doing. And that's kind of how I tried to tie them all in.
Sure.
And there was obviously overlaps, and there was times when one thing wasn't as profound as the other. But one thing I always wanted to do was be a businessman. So I felt like I was able to be a creative and a businessman at the same time. But I felt like those things were cool, but they weren't going to make me rich.
Yeah.
I felt like it's cool to be cool, but you need a house. You need. Yeah. I come from a big family. We need. I want to support my family. I'm the oldest of like 6 kids.
Okay.
So as much as I think that was one of my biggest drivers, because it's just, we grew up with not a lot. So one of my biggest drivers was I feel like in my generation, I need to turn that around. And so I feel like things like property and bigger business was always appealed to me. I was always interested in it. I always sort of read up on stuff. And so property I wouldn't say a natural progression. I kind of felt like it was something I'd do a lot later down. I felt like you needed a lot of money to do property.
Yeah.
So my only intention for property was to save up and buy my council flat.
Yeah.
That was it. That was my only goal. So in that 2014, 15, maybe 16, I was just saving. And I was just going to buy my flat from the council. And that for me was property check. That's it. You got a property.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand how you'd make money from it. I just thought you just acquire and that's it. When you get old, you sell it and that's how you've made your money. And I literally met a guy and my brother had met him and he says, I'm a property investor, full time. I don't work. And we was like, wow, he lives good. And so he basically said, if you need a hand with anything, like I can teach you stuff. I can tell you. And he basically told me about my first PIN meeting. and he
Okay.
gave me Simon Zucchi's book, and I read it. And from then I said, right, I'm gonna go and take over this.
So that was what, 5 years ago?
I actually started in property in 2017.
Right. So 3 years
So
ago.
yeah,
Yeah,
three,
three and a half years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Prior to that, I had no experience in property at all.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. And so just in terms of the music thing, just to kind of box that bit off. So
Yeah.
the culmination of that was you were were you in a boy band? You were in some kind of thing where is that right? Is that all right to say that
No,
or?
no, I mean, what we was kind of like, I was fortunate because I managed to, so I did, I built like a collective. It was like, yeah, not a band, but it was a collective. Me, my younger brother, and my friend. I don't, let me
Right.
turn it. So you can see
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
three of us. So I think it kind of, it was cool because one of my brothers was in an actual band, like they play music live, you
Yeah.
know. So he was a drummer, and we did songs together. So our group and his group would do songs together. So I guess the amalgamation was like seen like a band.
Yeah.
We just like we just rapped. We made beats, we rapped, and we made songs, and we was able to do quite well. You know, we you know, the songs were in heavy rotation on MTV.
Okay.
It's Radio One, One Extra. You know, we done some really cool stuff with it. So I think that made me as far as when you're doing stuff and there's levels, that made me realize you can go to top level if you're prepared to put in the work.
Yeah.
And focus and time. It wasn't instant, you know.
That.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that. I think in lots of examples, and certainly my personal experience, and what my brother's done as well.
Mm.
It's a lot of it is about resilience and being able to just persevere when somebody says no or something goes wrong. It's just being able to kind of go home, take stock of that, but come back harder and come back stronger and
It's never,
keep on
and
going.
again, it's never personal. You
No.
know, a no, what's to say? No doesn't mean no, never. Just no, not now. It's not
Yeah.
personal. It's actually, the no's are actually part of, they're doing you a favor. It's part of your own development. Because
Yeah.
one thing you don't want to do is peak too soon.
Yeah.
So if someone says no, you ain't got the finished product. They're basically, it's like training. They're telling you, if you go away and make it more like this, or if you come back. When I used to see musicians talk and they say, "Oh, I've been doing it for 10 years," I used to think, I'm not waiting 10 years. 10 years is a long time. When you get older, 10 years goes like that.
Mm.
And it goes, so it's one of those things where that consistency is what will build you.
Yeah, no, definitely. So was it using that the kind of income that you generated from the various things that you had going on that then enabled you to start investing, or were you
Yeah,
using
so
other people's money to make those investments? How did
no,
you go
so
about getting
so
out?
what I did was I was able, like I said, we grew up pretty frugal, man. And even when I had when I had money, I only really spent it on business. So often went back in the business, which didn't always make me money. So I think for the first 10 years, it gave me options, but I never really had an income because I'd
Yeah,
always spend it on business. I'd always buy more stock, or so I never learned to separate and pay myself. I never did all of those things. So when it got to like maybe 2000 and maybe 13, I started up a alcohol delivery company,
okay,
and most of the businesses I'd had, I was passionate about them. That business, it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't passion. That was money.
mm.
That was just literally, I was just a slave to money, not in a bad way, but I felt like I need leverage now,
Yeah,
and so money that we'd made from music and stuff, I was able to put it to one side and actually invest it in something that was gonna make money. Music, you don't do to make money.
no,
Something you're passionate about. The goal isn't necessary to make money. Money is, you'd like to, but if
yeah,
you put your song out, it doesn't make money, then it is what it is. If you love it, you'll keep doing it.
yeah,
So I
exactly.
wanted a business that is literally, this is just a money turner. You know, your money is like a slave, and your slave has to have babies. and this is that. This is just going to keep turning. So I did that for years. Like we're talking like a good sort of 5 years. I worked and I was very hands on. I worked and I didn't. In 5 years, I maybe took off maybe 6 or 7 Saturdays.
Yeah.
Other than that, I worked and so again, like it never ruined my friendships, but it limited the amount of time I spent around people. And I thought people that kind of care for you will just respect the hustle and know that you're driven to do something. But that's what I did. I'm not saying it's people should do that, but that's what I was prepared to do to make the income I needed. So like I said, my goal was just to buy my flat off
Yeah.
the council, and I was in a position to do that. Just met a guy that said, "Yeah, don't do that. You know, you want to do this." So all my money, I just saved and saved and saved and saved for years. I didn't spend. I hardly went out, other than your tracksuit here or there. I didn't really buy stuff either. So I when I opened up my eyes to property, um, I was fortunate that I had capital there. But I think one of the biggest things, the biggest assets was training. You know,
Right.
training, I think was more powerful than anything else.
So that by training you mean you physically investing in learning a process, a structure from somebody
Yeah, man.
to enable you to then go and
Yeah,
transact in
yeah,
different acquisitions,
yeah.
different investment strategies, and so on and so
Because
forth.
because I mean, ultimately, we live in an age where you can kind of learn anything.
Yeah.
The difference is like, you just pick up a book. That don't necessarily mean you can do it, or just going on a course. It comes down to your commitment and your preparation and your execution. On top of that, there's things like your network or a mentor. Those things are all important, but it's doing them all together
Yeah.
simultaneously and just taking that action to get stuff done.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest game changer for me, being in a different environment and learning stuff and then implementing it.
Yeah. Okay. And so you've obviously gone and acquired some properties. You've built up a portfolio to date. How does that kind of look and feel now? So you've got X number of units, and I know you've got some development bits going on as well. So what's the kind of the sum of the parts, and that's either number of units or value, up to you how you describe that, and then also a kind of an overview of what you actually spend your day doing, because I know you've got some virtual assistants that help you with the things you do as well. And yeah, it'd be interesting just to understand the kind of where you are today and how you feel about where you are today, the kind of structure that you've implemented in terms of how your business works.
Yeah.
And then after that we'll go on to what the future might hold as well.
It took me, I think, with the property, because I didn't really have a particular direction. I tried a bit of everything.
Right.
So jumped in. I was like, I'm gonna do some flips. I'm gonna I'm gonna add value and sell, put it back on the market. Um, Assisted sales. I tried a bit of everything. I'd done HMOs.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a dual strategy because I thought, well, I'm from London, lived there my whole life. I've hardly ever really left London, to be fair. But I saw value in creating a dual strategy where doing stuff in London, which requires a lot more capital, but then doing stuff outside of London, and I didn't really know where I wanted to pick. So I thought, because with London, obviously, I'm from here. I've got relationships here. I've got good knowledge. But I felt like I was limited in what I could do. Where, you know, like Liverpool, I started investing in Liverpool, and I think the first house I bought in Liverpool was about 50 grand.
Mm.
And then I turned that into 150 grand as far as refinance. If I sold it privately, then it would have been 200 grand. And you do that a few times, and actually I've got more capital. So I just kept throwing everything I was making and throwing it back in, which was cool. But at the same time, there was a lot of learnings because I was doing everything at once, and all the money was my own. So I'd never ever worked with somebody else's money.
Okay.
Which at the time I thought it was cool to be able to do it because I didn't have to answer to anyone, and I could go and not necessarily make mistakes, but I can just go and try. I'm a tryer. I'll just go and do, and I can learn. Obviously, made all the mistakes, and but then you're limited, and so I wanted to. I think proof of concept is good because I'm prepared to go and put my money where my mouth is.
Sure.
In terms of growth, it does limit you, and so it means that you can only grow as far as you can grow, because and it's very singular. Where if you work in teams or you work with people, then you can
Yeah.
grow together. You can tap into people's resources. So at the moment, I mean, one of the coolest things I ended up acquiring was a club in
Okay.
Liverpool, and then I was able to get planning gain in that to turn that into a 40-bed service accommodation unit.
Well. Okay.
Downstairs is just commercial space. We're going to turn that into a dark kitchen.
Okay.
Um, so again, it's cool to be. I think that's where the creative side of me kind of kicks in, and so I think that was one of the coolest projects that I've done. I've looked at other stuff, but I always wanted to go into development. It felt
Yeah.
like development was a big boys game, but I just felt like, well, if I can just start learning now, let's say fail big and fail fast, but
Yeah.
if I can just do that early, then I ain't got to play around with refurbs and then HMOs for 10, 15 years. I'll come in the game, do that for 2 years, and then start focusing on development at the same time. And now that's all I really work on. So
Okay.
there's I've got like a couple mils worth of property at the moment, and obviously that's still growing. I've decided to stop doing refurbs and stuff like that,
Okay.
just because I don't like the unknowns. I don't like the inconsistencies. Like, you strip walls back and there's parts of buildings that look like they want to fall over, and that for me is like, I don't know. I did a house one time, right, and there was a split down the middle of the house. It looked like the house wanted to just fall on its front and its back at the same time, and I just thought that's so unsafe.
Yeah.
It's so obviously if you just leave it, it just, but because I know that's there now, in my head I'm thinking that's not safe. I've had a chimney fall one time. I hate chimneys. Me and chimneys ain't good friends. It literally was. I was refurbing a house, and the chimney. I asked the neighbor if I could just remove it. They don't use it. We don't want to use it, and it just literally caved in. It ripped half of his wall down,
Oh God.
and I just said, "No, I feel like with new builds, not only can we be more eco-friendly, more sustainable, but we can be safe. We can guarantee that what we put together is done in a certain way. It's going to be, I'm thinking of the end user
Yeah.
and safety, and that's just, yeah. So those little things, people say it's part of the game. It just meant that I wasn't in control of the quality.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah.
in control of what we were creating. So that was one of the things for me to say, like, I'm just going to focus on new builds, whether it's ground up or airspace. But property, yeah. So I've managed to do okay. I've managed to I've hold on to everything. I've not sold anything.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that you're involved in. We've got this little airspace project you and I are working on at the moment, and we're just
Yeah.
kind of getting the wheels turning on that.
Yeah.
And I think a key part of that is that kind of modular or offsite manufacturing approach, the OSM. And I know that you're heavily involved in that in terms of the project with Ken, who's a mutual contact of ours as well.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to kind of hear your thoughts on where that goes and how you see that market evolving.
For me, it's change is inevitable. Change is inevitable, and I was introduced to offsite manufacturing, OSM, offsite manufacturing, or modern methods of construction. The first part of it I was introduced to was modular buildings, and a guy, he's quite a savvy developer. I know him from up north, and he told me about it. And when he was explaining it to me, I couldn't get my head around the concept of it. He kept saying it to me, and he's a bit of a lad. So when he's explaining it to me, it sounds like Lego. I was saying, but we're talking about buildings. You know, this is buildings are stuck in the ground. Like buildings are stuck to the floor. You can't just and he wasn't good at explaining it to me, but it fascinated me. I'm someone I love. I think the creative side of me. I'm very. I love innovation. So anything innovative has an appeal to me. And I spent, so that was about 2 years ago. So quite early on in my journey, he told me about it. But in the lot, I would say at that point, there wasn't even that much information about sort of modular developments. There wasn't a lot you could see. They were very sparse. So even some of the big players in the game, I think Urban Splash were
Yeah.
doing their thing, but there wasn't loads of sites they'd done. So there was a couple of I think Lesco. Who else was there? Oh, I can't remember the names. I know the N House. There wasn't a lot. 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, there wasn't a lot of even sites that. So people might have had showpieces, but there wasn't lots of sites being done out. And but for me, when I saw it, I said, "This is the future." And
Mm.
what's funny is that it's quite. You see it a lot overseas. It's just the UK is quite far behind, for whatever reason.
Mm.
Sometimes us British people are a bit conservative in
Yeah.
our approach, but I feel like it was because for me the construction industry itself is quite. I would say it's out of date. It's just not that open because things are done in a particular way, and people like it like that. So
Mm.
any form of change, it threatens people's perspective, might threaten their the way they work, their income, which it actually doesn't. But that's how people perceive stuff. And for me,
Mm.
change is inevitable. And I what I liked about it was that it ticks a lot of boxes. It's ultimately what it is for people who don't know. It's where most of the construction is done offsite. So it's done in in a factory of some sort. But it means that we can build because it's not different materials. You're still using timber or steel or whatever you're using. It's just done a different way. It means that you're able to create environments that are actually safer for people. You're actually able to be more apply more precision in your build and create a better product. We can actually create products where they're more thermally efficient, so you're saving money. It's better for the environment. We can build homes now where they're literally almost 100% recyclable,
Mm.
where prior to that the construction industry has had is does crazy stuff as far as landfill and the stuff that goes into landfill from construction industry is quite a lot. It's bad. I
Mm.
believe up to 40%.
Mm.
So it's those things there. For me, it ticks every box. It's a better product. It's safer. It's faster. It's like 10 times faster. It's wasn't necessarily cheaper, but you can save money in the speed of implementation. And I just felt like it's a space that there's not a lot of there's not there needs to be more going on in that space. So when I saw it early, I was like, I'm gonna just jump in and get involved. Yeah.
Mm. No, it's an interesting one. I saw a post on a Facebook group that I'm a member of this morning where somebody was saying that they're a wholesaler of building materials,
Mhm.
and they reckon that building material costs since Brexit and we've left the EU have gone up by potentially up to 15%, and there's real supply chain issues as
Yeah.
well. So offsite manufacturing can really help with all that stuff because you've
Mhm.
effectively got a contractor who builds on a fixed price. It completely de-risks the project for you. Once you're at the ground, you've got the slab, you're on your way, aren't you?
You're kind of on your way, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's funny is again, one of the biggest holdups was the way the industry views it. So getting the finance on it.
Mm.
People's like, we don't understand it. What is it? A porta cabin? You're not gonna get mortgages on it. So the time it took for the finance industry to catch up was crazy. But
Mm.
then what we had to do is banks had to start going to factories and seeing the process and understand how it works. It's like it's still a house. It's just done in a different way. And I think the best way for people to understand it is it's like a combination of property and automotive industry combined.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'd say to someone is, would you buy a car that was built outside? I'm like, no. So why would you buy a house? But it's because in your head, houses are outside. And that's what I couldn't understand. I was like, well, how could you make a house inside? But then that didn't make sense until I saw it. And then I saw how it worked, and I understood how houses were built. You got the different layers, and because when you're in your house, you're just inside. But understanding you got the different skims, the different layers, that can be done internally, and then positioned outside or assembled outside. And so it's just for people to understand the process. And like you said, it's a fixed cost. Your house is just going to cost that price. Today, tomorrow, the day after, next week, next month. When it's done individually under the elements, the contingency for it is a lot higher. Because you just don't know. If it turns up, if it's raining, then no brickwork's getting done. This country could rain for months.
Well, and particularly at the moment with the weather as cold as it is, it's too cold for cement to go off, isn't it? So
more cement. So then you're just done. Where offsite, literally, like obviously there's different types. Whether you're using the panelized system, which is when it's done in panels, or modular, or timber frame. But you could have a house built in as, I think, some modular places could build a house in as quick as 4 days. The actual building of the house, but you need a time frame of maybe 3 months just to get all the materials in. But the actual building of the house is in a week.
It's incredibly fast, isn't it? It just means, and I agree with you. I think the efficiency side of it and all of that stuff, I think, is really, really, really important. And frankly, it's the way that the industry has to move. And I think you're right. There's naturally been some resistance from the construction industry, which is probably a bit scared of it because it's going to potentially.
It's just fair. I look at it. It's just fair. But I mean, one thing people need to understand: it's never going to fully take over. I think most people's mindsets was, well, what about me?
Yeah.
What about my job? And it's like, it's not going to take your job over. But at the same time, we have to look at, the government has a goal, and there's a quote of houses that need to be built. So this could help that. So there's types of maybe areas or types of there's development types where this might be more suited to help us get that quota down. But it's not going to completely take over. People say, but then all the houses are going to look the same, or developments start to look the same. But then that's always been the case. If you grew up in a certain area, the houses probably look the same anyway. So it's not different.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been to Moscow and Russia, but there's blocks and blocks of places that look the same over there for sure. No, interesting. I think it's getting that pricing right, isn't it? And I think initially when these things were launched, you were paying a massive premium for it, and it ultimately becomes, that's not cost effective. But as the economies of scale start coming into it and the efficiencies improve, then I think naturally, if it's on par or slightly cheaper, and you know that you're not going to have the cost overruns that you potentially would have with kind of traditional construction methods, then you can potentially use it to your advantage. So it's an interesting space. Obviously we're in the middle of, we haven't touched on the environment that we find ourselves in terms of in the middle of a lockdown. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning, but how are you dealing with that, and has that had any impact on your businesses that you've got going on at the moment?
Lockdown was challenging. At one stage, a lot of the stock I had, I turned into service accommodation.
Okay.
I wanted to play with it, because most of my stuff was self-managed. I was doing it myself. I've had teams, I've had VAs that were managing the HMOs and doing stuff like that. At one stage, I thought I would want to, boost my income a bit, play around with it, and so I put the houses onto Airbnb and Booking.com, and was doing great. Was doing okay. yeah, COVID just wipes that out completely. The bottom line gone, and so some of the houses were actually empty.
Right.
So you're paying mortgages and there's no money. So it's like wow. And then at the beginning, no one really knew. Remember, you couldn't do like I think no one could move in or move out. It
Yeah.
was, I had friends where they had HMOs and some of their tenants just left. Like, we're scared, we're going back to our parents. This is some bullshit. It's like some people left and didn't even pay rent. Like
Yeah.
just left. So
Yeah.
it was a chaotic time. Again, I didn't panic. I just said, well, panic is what everybody's doing. Panic is why there's no food on shelves. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna panic. I just watched everything. But after a while, right, bills are still coming out. I was able to get mortgage holidays, but then I've got a couple of properties I've got bridges on.
Right.
So construction wasn't getting done, refurbs weren't getting done. And the bridging companies were just like, nope, you still got to pay. I was like, oh, and I never got bounce back loans. I never got anything. I just wasn't in a position to get them because at the time I I was only using fintech accounts like so Tide basically.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when Tide came in, they joined the party quite late, the
Mm.
bounce back party, and then their money was gone in 5 weeks, and I
Yeah.
didn't get anything. So I was literally like, how am I going to maneuver out of this? But I just looked at it as an opportunity to grow. When we was talking about your brother and just that resilience, it's the same kind of thing. It doesn't
Mm.
feel good in the moment, but you just got to hold into your laurels. And so small things. I think what weirdly prior to that, I had a bit of a situation, which was the end of 2019, where I was waiting for a refinance,
Right.
and it took a lot longer than I anticipated,
Yeah.
and it almost effed me, bro. I was like, I've got stuff coming out. I had stuff I need to pay for, but
Yeah.
I was going to release about 100 grand. So
Yeah.
I wasn't broke, but I didn't have any money. But I
Yeah.
thought, like, this is coming. I said to them, how long do you reckon it's going to take? Take a couple of months. Yeah, cool. Bro, it took about almost 6 months. So
Yeah.
I was really under it to the point where people, I had debts and they were like, free, you need to pay this. And I think what pissed me off is it wasn't large amounts of money. But
Mm.
when you owe money, you owe money. So
Yeah.
it might be like you owe us £1,500, you owe us 2 grand. So it's an amalgamation of these small little debts,
Yeah.
but I wasn't able to pay them, and so
Mm.
that was tricky. And I just felt like the people that was the conveyancers were being so difficult. And I explained to them going in. I just said, and I had all my paperwork, so the stuff they were asking for, I felt was over the top. But it wasn't even that they was asking; it was the way, it was the time. So if I sent something on a Monday, I wouldn't get a response till the Friday, and it was like, oh, by the way, that's not acceptable because you haven't done this. And
Yeah.
so what should have been done in a month took 4 months, and it
Yeah.
was excruciating. But that happened. I managed to keep my head in the game, stay above. I was on thin ice. But that prepared me. So when it came to COVID,
Yeah.
used to it. I had very, 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 very simple structures. No matter how you feel or what's going on, there's some stuff you can't control. Stuff you
Mm.
can control, make sure that's on top. You're on top form. So get good sleep. Don't eat shit. Because if you eat shit, you feel shit.
Yeah.
So really the basic stuff, 3 liters of water a day, read for half an hour a day. That kept me sane when
Yeah.
my work felt like it was crumbling. So with
Yeah.
COVID, I literally was like, it's like that was boot camp. So when it came to COVID, I was like, this is light work.
Yeah.
Stay in your
Yeah.
house. You should stay in anyway. So stay in. I was doing runs daily. I was doing burpees. I was eating balanced diet. So I was in a good space. But financially, it kind of, my cash flow dried up.
And it's that old saying during these times is the truth, isn't it? Cash is king.
Cash is king,
And it's
I went from king to pauper. He brought me back down. Again, it's good. Equity is cool. Having stuff is cool, but I hadn't had a contingency for this. So I thought, well, my portfolio isn't even that diverse. I still had a few HMOs, but they were paying for themselves and maybe bringing in some money. But I wasn't able to pay for the rest of the ecosystem. And I just didn't have spare cash. Everything I've got is just invested. So I'd have to wait for another refinance. I told you how the last one went.
Yeah.
So that's not going to come anytime soon. So again, I think the most powerful thing with COVID, it taught me that you your business needs to be recession proof as much as you can make it. You can't always make something recession proof, but the diversity needs to be in there.
Mm.
Because if someone had told us that was going to happen a year before it happened, then I probably would have played the game differently. So
Yeah.
while it was happening, I was like, right, if this was to happen again, like we don't know when it's going to stop, how would I do my business differently, or how could I pivot? There was a lot of pivoting going on, and it was powerful. It was good to see what other people was doing.
Yeah.
I don't wish unfortunate circumstances on anybody. So it was interesting seeing some people thriving. It was interesting seeing some people against the ropes. I was kind of against the ropes, but my head wasn't. My head was good.
Yeah.
One of my cousins, he owns a couple of franchises, like the dessert stores,
Okay. Yeah.
and his business was booming. He
Yeah.
was like, bro, I make more money now with the shop shut because we don't have people sitting in. I make more money now than I did when it was open.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
expanding. And I was like, that's powerful because, but equally does property. So the property stuff, it kind of took a bit of a hit, but it was interesting in seeing that there's opportunities in everything. So as
Yeah.
much as it might not be for you, it's interesting seeing other people are growing in these markets, in these conditions. And what could I do? What kind of maybe digital products could I start creating? What kind of content could we, it's just pivoting. You got to be, it's like a real hustle. You got to really be focused and be open and just drive it.
I agree. I think, yeah, for me personally, it was, I was kind of, fortunately, I had cash, so I wasn't,
Yeah.
under pressure from that perspective.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was, okay, for me, it was more about what the fuck am I going to do with my life? I'm sitting, sitting at home, all my businesses are shut,
Yeah.
like, so, but I spent that time, yeah, investing in, sending letters out to potential
Exactly.
development sites,
Exactly.
searching for things, building websites, all that good stuff. And I think, yeah, it kind of was back to basics in some ways, and
Yeah.
hopefully some of
100%.
some of those things that I've invested my time and energy in are going to come to fruition in the coming months and
They
years. So
actually will, and I think one of the biggest things because like you mentioned Paul Davis earlier, and I've always been a massive advocate of Nimbus because I just I love I like them personally. I love their ethos. I like the way they apply themselves to what they do. But I think that the business is dope. It's great. You could sit. So when we're now forced to stay in, their
yeah,
business just went boom because
yeah,
you're in your house. But it was a tool I'd used before then. But it made me realize that I'd been caught up in the business. I need to build the business so it works around my goals. My business, I was busy being busy.
yeah,
I need to focus on what my thing was. And so as a developer, the beginning of before lockdown, the beginning of 2020, I'd done like I'd won an award for business strategy, and one of my key things was I'm going to focus on acquisitions, focus this pipeline. I feel like so with lockdown, it kind of meant I had the space to do that. I feel like without the pipeline, you don't really have a business. So for me, pipeline of development deals that I could either build out myself or sell. So I just wanted to focus on acquisitions. I called it shacquisitions. I just want to just get a pipeline of deals. And so
yeah,
this was my tool of choice. So with lockdown, it was like, cool, just hone in on that. Just get dope at doing that, build a team, start talking to people, build a system. So I systemize my business to basically just get development deals.
yeah,
And just really so lockdown for me was an experience. It wasn't personally, I wasn't in a bad space mentally, and I was actually able to execute my goals for 2020 because I had the time to do nothing else. I
yeah,
just focused on doing that. There's a guy called James Williams who does business systems and processes. So
Right.
I spent a lot of time working with him and just getting my business processed. And so that's where, you know, I got the VAs. They come in and we just work on getting that pipeline straight. You know,
And,
speak
and and I guess also that then enables you to actually focus on doing the things that you like doing.
exactly.
Because for me, you know, I mentioned this on the previous episode, but for me, a lot of this is about designing your life and designing your
Lifestyle
lifestyle.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, so that I spend my time doing the shit that I want to do, and the shit that I want to do is talking to people like yourself that
Yeah.
inspires me, that then makes me go and think, right, I want to go and do more, you know, have more, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, 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 yeah. And that's exactly it. So when people are kind of, I think what's powerful about this is people that haven't realized that or was unaware of that have probably sat down in lockdown and been worried about the unknowns. It's then you see other people actually they're changing stuff. They've took something negative and turned it into a positive. They've actually said, well, you know what, seeing as I can't do this anymore, I'm just going to focus on what I can do.
Yeah,
And I found the processing stuff very overwhelming. It really blows my head. Systems, all that stuff is not, that's not my groove. Hence why I employ someone to help me do it. But it's like a desert. You know, when you're in it, it's not, it don't feel great. When you come out the other side, you're better for it. So now not only do I understand it, I can implement it. And like you said, I can now focus on the parts that I want to do. So just, you know, a lot of the repetitive work, you can kind of automate it where you can delegate it, and you can focus on the parts where the highest value is created.
yeah,
So if we're looking at sites, my goal was to focus on what kind of sites I wanted, sites in sort of the million plus price range. So I know off the back of that, these are the kinds of fees I can make, but this is the kind of gross margins that people can make if they choose to build it out. If we go for maybe a pre or full planning on it, if whatever you want to do, I know in that space, if I add numbers to that, it's going to be lucrative. So I don't necessarily have to be bogged down doing work that's keeping me really busy but ain't really changing anything.
yeah.
So
Okay, so that brings us quite nicely as a segue onto the kind of future, what you think the future holds.
yeah,
Obviously, COVID isn't going away, and my opinion is we're probably in one of the trickiest trading environments
it's tricky.
that we find ourselves. A statistic, my wife works for Deloitte, the accountancy firm, and she told me yesterday that car sales were the lowest they've ever been for 30 years.
Wow.
So that's an indicator of consumer confidence.
Yeah,
If
yeah, yeah.
people aren't buying new cars, you know,
Yeah.
there's lack of confidence out there. So yeah, we're in a tricky environment. So yeah, how do you what's your plans going forward, and how do you plan to deal with the COVID?
One of the things I do is I feel like action begets action. And so I say to people that feel anxious or people that feel depressed, like I said, COVID was a very anxious period. There was parts of the work I was doing that made me quite anxious because I found it overwhelming. So I just take action. Um, there is a lot of fear with, especially in our game, like a potential market crash, recession, all that stuff. So then some part of me is like, well, if I start acquiring these sites or I start building stuff out and someone pulls the rug from under my feet, what the fuck am I gonna do?
Mm.
Um, but again, that challenge is good because it makes you think in ways that it makes me go into a level of detail I may not have gone into prior. Before I was like, build it up, slap it out. We'll worry about who lives in it afterwards. We'll
Yeah.
sell it. But now I'm like, actually, I need to tie in a very, very strong exit strategy.
Mm.
So maybe I need to work with an organization that houses key workers. Maybe I need to work with an organization that houses young people at risk. Things like that de-risk. So even if the value's gone, it's not necessarily gone if your exit is there. So things like that, moving forward, it's just really being super detailed in your approach. And if you can have really strong exits, or you're in a good area where even if the values drop, there's still going to be a demand that keeps you in a cool space. You're not always going to have that, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's risk in everything. So for me, it's my goal is to keep while people may be sort of umming and ahhing. I'm all guns blazing, all guns blazing.
I guess also as well, if you are taking that planning risk, then there's an element of time from acquisition or control of the site
Yeah,
to actually taking it through the planning process, and then obviously the time that it takes to build it out, which obviously with modular
so,
construction will be quicker.
yeah,
But clearly there's a margin there as well, because if you are building that plan, taking that planning risk, then you should be getting a significant uplift just by achieving planning,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then obviously then you get the construction margin on top of that. So hopefully that should help insulate yourself if there is a bit of a bit of a turn.
100%. But then I think with me as well is if I potentially might take a hit on something like that. So one of my big goals is to is I've always, like I said, massive growth. I want to do big things, but I feel like there's always got to be a give back. So one of the things that I was quite passionate about with the modern methods of construction was having my own sort of my own, maybe a factory or my own situation where we could build some of these houses. And so with us kind of having that now, it's given me an opportunity to give back. And I'm very passionate about employing young people that have maybe been at risk or ex-offenders, people that I want to be able to give opportunities to people that I know would like to have the opportunities where maybe society hasn't given them. I can say, do you know what? I don't care about that. I don't care about what's happened. I care about what you want to do moving forwards.
Yeah.
So so that's where the modern methods of construction can give opportunities to people that want to work. So if I may have potentially taken a hit on one aspect, I know that aspect should be, I could still provide growth in that region, because I know that, all right, that might not be happening, but people still need the houses.
Yeah.
So as much as the market might not dictate that it's a good idea, people will still need the houses. People still need the places to live. So for me, it's just all guns blazing. I think we can, like you said, there's time there where you've gone from control or acquisition to planning or how you want to do it. But I just think it's action begets action. So as long as you're doing something you're going in the right direction, you can always pivot if you need to. But for me, lockdowns just taught me to just be open-minded to other exits, repurposing, just being creative in the way you do that, and maybe aligning yourself with other organizations, working with other developers. It means that we have access to resources that you may not have thought about going in.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all guns blazing.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of your kind of world domination plans, I like to put it in that way. I've got the white cat, and I like sitting there stroking it. But yeah, what's the plan for you? Is it 100 sites? Is it what's where do you kind of see yourself positioned in say 5 years time?
5 years time. It's funny because originally, I remember the first time I met a few people that owned 100 sites, and I was blown away, like, wow. And then it became not normal, but I knew a few people that had 100 sites. But then 100 sites doesn't mean anything. It's a number.
Yeah.
It's like when I first got into property, everyone was like, I want 10 grand a month. It's just
Yeah.
a number. How much do you actually need?
Yeah.
And 10 grand is very obtainable. What are you prepared to do to get that? So
Yeah.
100 sites, because you could have 100 shit sites.
Well, no. I just use that as an example. So yeah.
But again, in my head, that's the kind of thing I would have said. Yeah, I'm gonna get 100 sites.
Yeah.
My husband said I'm gonna get 1,000 sites, and we was like, yeah, and we'll buy helicopters in 5 years' time. For me, it wasn't necessarily the sites. I think when I started focusing predominantly on developments, I was looking at value, and so like. Last year I said, right, in the next year I want to make £1 million for myself. I just want to have it. And one of the things I like about that, as much as it might sound sort of arrogant, Jim Rohn says the good thing about becoming a millionaire, it's not necessarily the money, it's the changes you've made in yourself to become that. You're not going to be a millionaire being a slob or being lazy. it's working on yourself in those key areas like your routine, your focus, your drive, your execution. So I kind of came in love with that process on that self-development
Yeah.
to enable me to unlock to become a millionaire. So that was my goal.
Yeah.
And I've just decided for me, I have to 10x that, you know,
Okay.
I have to 10x that. So it's like, if, and to be fair to anybody, if you are aiming for something, you should really be looking at 10x it. And I think one of the powerful things with 10x in something isn't, again, it's not the amount, it's what it takes for you to 10x something.
Mm.
So 10x thinking is saying, well, if I wanted a mil, I'd probably go out and earn it. If I want 10, I'd actually need to pull in resources and build a team that can help me. So if you think like that anyway, then it's exponential. So for me, like a 10 mil was kind of that's kind of what when I sit down and plan my strategy. So when I'm looking at sites or developments, it's more, I look at it from a numerical perspective, and that's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah. Okay. No, lofty goals, but I'm sure you'll get there with
Yeah.
the resilience you've shown so far, and will continue to no doubt show. So you touched on it there as well, actually, and that's something I was going to ask you about. So do you have a kind of specific morning routine, or how do you structure your time?
I have had one, and it was the best I've had. It slips, it drops in and drops out. But Miracle Mornings is a great routine.
Okay.
And I basically I said, well, I'm gonna get so they've got Miracle Mornings for Millionaires. So I bought that book, and just the principles of it is they call it the Savers. And to anyone that's not familiar with that, the Savers is literally SAVERS. So you've got silence, which is meditation. Um, and again, they weren't things that I was able to fully do. So it took me time to learn to try and meditate, to understand it and how to get stuff from it. So I've tried different things. I've tried guided meditation. Um, Meditation's great. Just even if it's just silence for 5 minutes to
Yeah.
yourself to just get up and do that. So my morning routine is, I would do a bit of meditation, affirmations. I've
Okay.
written out an affirmation list. If you can do it, mornings is great. If you're really on the ball, twice a day. So end of the day, beginning of the day, it just kind of keeps you focused, but you lock it into your goals. So your affirmations can be quite wholesome, as in, just appreciative of the things I have. But again, it locks you into what your goals are for the day or for the month, for the year, but it keeps you accountable.
Yeah.
The V is visualization.
Yeah.
So maybe some people do mood boards, or they visualize. I think one of the cool tricks was like, if I'm going to start speaking to these vendors, I have to visualize myself not only wanting to do it, being good at it.
Yeah.
So little things like that. Exercise is powerful. Again, you don't have to do the most. I like to run. I've taught myself how to run, and I'm okay at it. But it could just be like 5 minutes. It could be like 20 push-ups. I just think some form of exercise, something to get the blood going. Reading and scribing. So if you
Yeah.
can read. If not, audiobooks. I think audiobooks have been my friend for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I just download some great books, and I just soak them up, and scribing, writing, journaling, or just writing ideas. I think the powerful thing for me is with reading. One thing I never did years ago was I never actioned the stuff that I read. So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and said, this is great. I feel like I've learned some stuff which I have, but now it's about reading it, and when you see something, actually putting that into your diary and doing that like tomorrow. This is now what I do. That book said that. It says the 90-day year. This is how I do now, and
Yeah.
I feel like those things there really change you as a person. So that morning routine, I may not always do it all in the morning. I
Yeah.
may leave reading to another time of the day, or I don't do it every day. I might have a day where I do it a lot more. Or what I sometimes do is I put my audio book on while I'm doing low intensity stuff.
Yeah.
But that routine, I think, would literally change your life if you've got the time to do it. And it doesn't have to be long. If you've got an hour, then that's kind of a cool way to do it, or 90 minutes. Some people do it in 20, 30 minutes. Just literally a little bit of everything. 3 pages in the book, write a couple of lines, 10 push-ups, and even that is better than nothing.
Yeah. No, interesting.
Mm.
Cool. And then, so I suppose in terms of what your outlook of the market. So, do you think that the market is going to suffer a bit this year, or do you think we're going to kind of what's your outlook?
It's so hard, bro, and I'm not one of those analytic people. I kind of tap into other people's views often, but because again, people have been saying it since 2018. I've got friends that are smarter than me that since 2018 said, "Yep, the market's good. We're gonna have a recession. Gonna have a recession.
Yeah.
2019 gonna have a recession." So this has kind of forced our hands because the economy is fucked. Like the amount of furloughs and people unemployment levels are going to be through the roof. But then again, it can. But then, I mean, look at the summer. People said they've had the best. Just when the market softened a bit, when we were allowed to start doing stuff, people made more sales in that period than they'd made for the whole year. So that's like whoa. I mean, we could say that's actions based off the back of that's a reactive, they're
Yeah.
reactive sales. But from what I've seen, it looks like things are just kind of cracking on. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, my view is that there are obviously going to be elements of the economy that are, hospitality
Yeah, yeah,
sector, is fucked. Yeah, I'm a shareholder in a couple of bar restaurant companies, and they've gone through the floor. It's kind of not good.
yeah,
But at the same time, there are opportunities out there, and my personal approach is I'm looking to acquire some companies, and like yourself, I've got my kind of structure and my process in terms of
mm,
finding sites and going through
yeah,
that process. So I think, I think even in the darkest and most difficult of times, there's
yeah.
opportunity there, and it's just
There's always opportunity.
it's
I
finding it.
I think the mad thing is because I'm open minded to stuff and I'm around different types of people. There's people that are sitting there, not to sound crude, but they're rubbing their hands
Yeah,
like, oh my god, this is great. It's chaotic, but it's great. So then it makes me think, well, you just have to decide what side you're going to be on.
yeah,
And I know it's not that easy, but like you said, when things have tanked, like I said, all my like that 40 bed thing, that's all hospitality. That's fucked, bro. But it's like actually, there's an opportunity here. There might even worst comes to worst, I could sell it.
yeah,
But you're never proper fucked. There's always a way you can repurpose, re-strategize. There's always you just got to be open minded and be creative. So like you said, for me, it's all guns blazing. I'm looking to make acquisitions this year, possibly in other industry, other businesses that can complement what I'm doing. It's literally just it's all opportunities.
yeah. Okay.
Mm.
And so I suppose in terms of obviously for people who are struggling,
Mhm.
what advice would you give somebody who's maybe been made redundant, wants to make a go of things, wants to turn their life around and push? What advice would you give somebody who's in a difficult situation right now?
Um, I think we are not to discredit your situation, but we live in a time where you can get access to so much information right now. Maybe that's the bad side because it's probably information overwhelm or overload, but you could literally tap into anything. You could almost reach anybody. Um, and if you can't reach them, you can find out about them. And if you can't find out about them, you can find out about someone that's similar to them. And my point is you can kind of learn things, you can learn new skills, you can learn new ways to do stuff, basically reskilling yourself or finding you can like I wish I'd done this a lot sooner. The stuff that we're doing, I wish I learned it years ago. I say to young people that I mentor, like you're I want you, they say I want to be like you. I'm like, brother, I'm 40. I want you to be where I'm at by the time you're 25.
Yeah,
I want you, so I think people that are a bit stuck, it's it's about utilizing the time to really, like you said, life by design. Actually, how do I want my life to be? What things do I want to do? And you can find people that do those things and almost emulate them or learn from them and take. So I feel like it's almost an opportunity to have a fresh canvas and just paint how you want that to look. Um, it's I think it's about being inspired. It's about it's about learning. Always be. I think the problem is some people aren't open to learning because they feel like their situation dictates that. Oh, I'm
Mm.
this age, so I can't learn. That
Mm.
doesn't make sense. Oh, I've got 5 kids. I can't do a business. I've got my circumstances dictate, and there will be elements where it's you're at a, a point where you are a bit stuck, but we all know that's never forever. We've all been through periods in our life that were very challenging, and at the
Mm.
time you couldn't see past it. Now you kind of think about it and say, oh, okay, yeah, but it's not as bad. So I feel like people that are stuck ha- have the opportunity, or should take that as an opportunity to look for growth options, growth opportunities. Learn. Um, I would literally like I would just soak something up, whether it's a book, whether it's someone on YouTube, whether it's just a way of understanding how something works, whether it's there's and the thing is there's so many different ways to do that. People want to get into property, but property is one investment vehicle out of many.
Mm.
So there's lots of different ways you can do your thing. I think now is a good opportunity, or people that are stuck should take the time out and just be open-minded to learning new things and looking at things with a fresh lens.
And is there one particular book or piece of audio or film or whatever that you'd recommend to
um
start with?
I love quotes. I'm a big quotes man, so I look for things that have quotes. But I think one of the best books, I wrote it down, a book that I love. And there's loads and this is what I'm saying. Like, you could go onto YouTube and
Mm.
type in motivational speakers, and there's tons of cool people. Some of them are shit, but it's like anything. It's like books. Some books are better than others, but it depends on what you like. But
Mm.
generally, one of my favorite guys was Jim Rohn.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
got a book called The Art of Exceptional Living, and
Okay.
why I like that book is it's not about just business, and it's not about. Some people think, that balanced lifestyles, airy fairy. It's actually, so his is, you can be a nice guy and do very well. You
Mm.
don't have to be like Gary V, all guns blazing. You can actually be a wholesome person,
Yeah.
be do very, very well. And I feel like that book really embodies that. He talks very seriously, but he has humor. So I feel like that balance, someone that may not be well versed in, I don't want to be bogged down in loads of detail, or I'm not that hustle, hustle, hustle guy. I feel like Jim Rohn, Art of Exceptional Living, as a book or an audio book, is great. I think that's, and you could probably just, I just sometimes just go on YouTube and look for Jim Rohn or Les Brown and just leave it running and
Yeah.
just have it on. But it really opens your mind.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think if you're, because obviously different people learn in different ways.
Yes.
Having sitting down and physically opening a book isn't necessarily doesn't necessarily stimulate everybody,
Yeah. Yeah.
and having audio books and YouTube and all these different kind of formats, it
Yeah.
makes it much more accessible. So if you don't
Yeah.
like reading, you don't have to read. You can
Don't
listen
have
to
to.
it
No.
instead. It's yeah. I agree. That's a good point.
Mm.
Cool. So I think from my perspective, that's everything I wanted to talk about today.
Mhm.
Have you got anything that you'd like to leave our viewers and our listeners with? Is there any takeaways? And also, where do we find you on socials and so on and so forth?
My socials are, fortunately I'm Shaq Baker, SHACK Baker. I'm like the only one. So if you just go into that, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm literally the only one. So Shaq Baker. Um, and I think we've kind of covered it. I think one of the things um I literally just wanted to say is I wouldn't say I've had any particular a great success. I think success is just an amalgamation of all the things that have gone well. But to everything that's gone well, so I think what's funny is people think I'm younger than I am. And people say, oh, you've done really well. I was like, bro, I'm like, not necessarily, because I see a 20-year grind. So for me to, I've only been in property for 3 years, but I've been grinding and losing and failing for the last 15.
Yeah.
You understand? So it's not, things ain't always what they seem to be. And someone says, like, never compare your step 5 or step 6 or step 7 to someone else's step 57, someone else's step 85. So it's just being comfortable with where you are. And one of my things was, I wish I tapped into stuff sooner. All the audio books, the wealth of knowledge that's out there, I wish I did that part sooner. So I think people need to be kind to themselves, be open-minded, and when they find their thing, just grind their fucking ass off, bro. That's the only thing really. Anything. Action begets action. As long as you're taking some form of action, and your action, my action might not look like your action. I could look at you and be like, oh, fuck, Matt's made it. But people are not always looking at what you was prepared to do and what you have done. So I think stuff like this is powerful. This is probably the best thing people can do, is by listening to other people's stories and being influenced and inspired by how people have done it, but not feeling bad about their own situation. As long as you're taking some form of action, you're doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a journey. It's not about quick wins. It's about building. For me, it's about architecture and infrastructure, so that you systemize it and you build these processes, and then ultimately, you trust in the process, and you know that it's going to generate results in the long term. So, yeah, that's for me, it's not about a quick win. It's about the longer term game, but. Yeah. Whilst when we've all had those difficult times when you think the world's falling apart, the bottom's falling out of your world or whatever. It's being able to kind of take a step back and being able to identify, this is where I am today. This is the kind of vision of what I want to achieve, and I'm going to work over a long, sustained period of time to achieving that. So, yeah, cool. Well, I'm really grateful for your time. I hope it's I hope you've enjoyed it, and I think. I look forward to, this time next year, Rodders, we'll be seeing you with, is it 10 Bentleys this time, or, what's the game plan?
It's funny, people they do saying the thing about the car, and again, it is mad, but a lot of it, I mean, the thing people need to understand with wealth, there's a lot of money out there. Someone says there's never a lack of money. It's a lack of people tapping into it, or it's a lack of thinking big enough.
Yeah.
So my thing is that I want to buy a Rolls Royce. As crazy as that sounds, I'm going to do that.
I look forward to picking me up in that one.
I'm going to pick you up in a Rolls Royce. That's my plan. And again, people be whatever, fuck off. It's like, bro, that's what I want to do. After that, I might buy a bicycle. Yeah. But it's about doing what you want to do. Life by design. How does it look? I want to work hard enough to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because I've worked hard enough to do it. And
so now's the time. Let's fucking make it happen. Let's do this. You're there. All right, Mr. Shack Breaker, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining me, and I'll inevitably talk to you soon. I'll put your details on the description for obviously people to come and visit you. You've got a website as well. Do you have a website that you run?
Yeah, my business is called The Property Shack. So it's just literally The Property and Shack, SHACK.
Okay, and if anyone wants to reach out to you, for a bit of inspiration or whatever, I'm sure you'll field any questions.
Always open.
Yeah, cool. All right, thanks, bro. Nice one.
Cheers.
Cool. Take care.
Thanks for listening to The Growth Show with Matt Lindsay. Please like our podcast and subscribe today.